MeMonster.
Chapter 11. From my point of view and whoever was watching, Celeste is doing very well. Even if Celeste had been an ordinary person without superpowers, she would have attracted a large number of viewers. She was hardworking, talented, and her abilities were good. With such precise movements to calmly and wisely respond to every monster, it was hard to believe that she's only 17 years old. And since she is the eldest daughter of the Costantini family as well as beautiful, it was natural the viewers would flock to her channel. The number of normal viewers remained largely the same, but the situation changed in her private channel. Celeste Cam 7. Originally, it was only seen by 1 or 2 officials, but at some point, many officials suddenly gathered. And that was the moment. Protagonist Lee Yeonjun has gained the skill Take Notice A. That's the damn message that appeared in my mind. This was the 3rd protagonist I've met, and they all seem to be able to gain skills simply by thinking of overcoming their crisis. It was surprising that he suddenly acquired an rank skill here, but the real problem came next. Take Notice A, the more attention you receive, the stronger you become. The skill's effect. If it was another world, frankly speaking, this rank effect was so bad it could be as low as B or C in power. However, Earth was different. In modern times, the media has developed rapidly, and it was possible to watch someone from the other side of the world. This skill could honestly be S or SS rank. I am surprised such a crazy skill appeared as a rank in this world. Well, S-rank superpowers are rare, while there are quite a few people with A-rank superpowers. Fortunately, if someone had this crazy superpower from the start, they would have easily become the strongest. I have to stop him now. If Lee Yeonjun continues this dungeon and starts broadcasting on his own, something terrible could happen. Tens of thousands of people were still watching him, and thanks to them messages kept popping up in my mind. Level of protagonist Lee Yeonjun has changed, 63 plus 3. Level of protagonist Lee Yeonjun has changed, 63 plus 4. Protagonist Lee Yeonjun. Fortunately, the increase was not fast, and sometimes the bonus levels fell. It was being influenced by the number of viewers. If an extraordinary attention seeker had that superpower, Earth would be ruined. It's still fine. When I have the chance to kill him, I will do it. Although he was slowly losing his viewers, thanks to Celeste. The viewers who watch a hunter only for their appearance. Celeste was wearing a white one-piece ethos suit that looked quite similar to a spandex. It blended in very well with the background of the snow-covered forest, causing a stir among the viewers. What should I do? As time went on, there was a possibility that all the viewers from the other channels would come to his channel. But the good news was that it was a personal broadcast and not a live broadcast. Right, I just have to proceed as normal. In the meantime, I need to prepare a way to hunt him. It doesn't matter whether he's guilty of murder or not. He has to die now, so I'll settle it first and think about the future later. The number of viewers have not increased that much. At this level, it was still possible to deal with him. Yeah, as long as there's no variable. But it was a complacent thought. I've only fought against the protagonists so far and have never participated in the flow of the plot. That's why I didn't know the meaning of the word cliché until now. Cliché detected in the protagonist's story. Anson City. Monster Disaster Prevention Main Headquarters. It was one of the places where dungeons and gates throughout Gyeonggi Province were monitored. Wooing wooing. Suddenly alarms started to sound. The director of the institute, Han Yoonjung, hurried to the control room due to the sudden warnings. Researchers in white coats were busily moving. What's going on? I believe a dungeon mutation has occurred. Location. Uejongbu, the dungeon has been identified as the C-rank Dungeon Snow Peak of Polonia. What? Dungeon mutation. With a very low probability, the difficulty of a dungeon could fluctuate sharply. If the original wavelength was C-rank, it could suddenly become F-rank and vice versa. However, it was really rare and the headquarters could not help but panic because it was a phenomenon that has only happened a handful of times in Korea. Director Han Yoonjung's expression wrinkled. Damn it, we have to follow protocol. What's the read on the wavelength? That. The wavelengths changed sporadically, then slowly began to stabilize. It's S rank. What? Without notice, the C rank dungeon changed to a S rank dungeon. What a terrible thing to happen. Director Han Yunjung hurriedly spoke. Contact the Capital Defense Headquarters and have them on standby. We need to deploy a rank and S rank hunters right away. Director Han Yunjung was sweating profusely. Of all dungeons, it was Snow Peak of Polonia. Isn't that the dungeon where the famous trainees are currently having their debut? Come to think of it, that dungeon was not even registered as a wavelength observation in the first place. It was very rare for anything to happen, and no major problem has ever occurred. This is because a prophet who has the only prediction superpower on Earth has done very well at preparing for such a thing when it happens. The same was true of the C-rank dungeon Snow Peak of Polonia. I have a bad feeling about this. Once you enter a dungeon, you can't go out until it's cleared. In other words, all the people in there were stuck. Fortunately, there were rank and S-rank senior hunters inside. With that number of people, it may be possible to clear the dungeon, and it was also possible to hold out until the support unit came. Suddenly, S-rank. A-rank dungeons were clearly quantified, so if you send a few hunters, you can attack it without damage or variables. However, it is different for S-rank dungeons. Things that don't abide by common sense are bound to occur, and there are deformed monsters that were not registered in the monster database. It's not because S rank comes after a rank, but because it was impossible to measure S rank. She prayed inwardly, turning on the live broadcast in a hurry. I hope nothing happens. 3 hours into the dungeon exploration, a mutation occurred. Currently, Siadam saw that Celeste's ratings were still higher, and judged that everything would go smoothly right up to the boss area. What? This is damn, it's a dungeon mutation. Everyone pull back to point D. Suddenly, there was a dungeon mutation, and a call came from headquarters. S rank. Weathered Snow Peak of Polonia's 3,000 years of bitterness. The dungeon has been detected as S rank, so try to avoid engagement as much as possible. It was not the first time Siadam has experienced such a phenomenon. However, other hunters were visibly shaken since it was their first time. Even the S-rank Jang Hyunsuk. When attacking a S-rank dungeon or gate, it was advised to have a party of at least 3 S-rank superhumans and 20 A-rank superhumans. Of course, it was possible to attack with fewer numbers. If the number of superhumans were low, veteran hunters could make up for it. However, most of those who gathered here only had 5 to 7 years of experience, and Jang Hyunsuk was a fresh newbie who had just entered his 5th year. In fact, when Siadam was in his 5th year, he wandered the world and encountered many strange things that modern hunters did not. Since they had a 100% clear rate before the dungeon mutation, there was nothing to be embarrassed about if it went down to 99% now. So Siadam was forced to speak up. Everyone calm down and listen to me. He was lower ranked than everyone else here. Nevertheless, without realizing it, the superhumans listened to Siadam as if they were possessed. No one could explain why. We're not returning to point D. And why it was ordered by headquarters. The headquarters' judgment is wrong. If we retreat from this situation, we will encounter monsters that have regenerated and are stronger. It's better to move forward and build a pointy. We regenerated. The hunters learned a new word they were unfamiliar with today. Though of course the regeneration phenomenon wasn't a common thing to happen inside a dungeon. Siadam led the way with his ether blade coated in a blue light. The real battle starts now. Senior hunters will take the lead in protecting the trainees. Ah yes sir. Hunter Jang Hyunsuk, you will protect from the rear. It was a demand, but Jang Hyunsuk only slightly frowned, then did what Siadam told him. Looking ahead, Siadam exhaled deeply. S-rank dungeon. I've attacked it countless times. However, the equipment and colleagues are qualitatively different from then. Even though I have obtained a swordsmanship talent, to clear this S-rank dungeon with my current equipment was asking for too much. Siadam's current plan to overcome this situation was to move to a safe place and wait. The live broadcast was still on, but if we wait it out, the viewers will naturally fall off. But the plot's narrative knows that things are not going well. When a protagonist is faced with a crisis, the plot of their world will deviate. Because of the crisis of losing viewers, the protagonist has awakened a new skill to regain viewers. The most suitable environment for the use of the awakened skill has been created. The protagonist should never be defeated, even in number of viewers. If Autumn was not here, then neither would Celeste, and Lee Yongjun would have had a stable number of viewers. The plot would have ended without any chance for him to awaken a new skill. They would have successfully cleared this C-rank dungeon, his ability would have grown slowly, and the skill he probably would have awakened is attention. However, problems arose once the only person who could escape the influence of the protagonist blessing entered the plot. Lee Yongjun has not even stabilized his previous ability, Power Steroid C, but has already awakened another superpower. A supporting character taking away the protagonist's viewers. This was a crisis. Once the plot reaches its climax, the protagonist will regain his viewers, completing his sweet revenge. In other words, due to the appearance of Autumn, an abnormal phenomenon occurred out of nowhere, and the normal C-rank dungeon mutated into S-rank to serve as the stage for the protagonist to stand out. The protagonist was an existence who can make the most out of any situation. Wait, what do you mean the prospects shouldn't take the lead, huh? Who do you think you are? Boom pie. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw a prospect smashed a monster in the front, as if he would not listen to such cowardice orders. Well, what was that? Oh my god, did I just witness a C-rank trainee smashing in a rank monster? Muscle emoji. Surprised emoji 4x. Why, was that even possible? The viewers' reactions were explosive. Lee Yongjun was still at least C-rank. In addition, he is a newcomer who had just awakened. It came as a shock when he attacked and defeated a rank monster, who even senior hunters were wary of. Although it was Jang Hyun-suk and Yu Seodam who actually wounded the monster first, nonetheless, it was noteworthy for a trainee to take the initiative. Viewers naturally began to turn their attention to Lee Yongjun again. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 63 plus 7. Seodam clenched his teeth. Damn it, should I just shoot down all the drones? But he soon shook his head. There was no need to risk Lee Yongjun awakening another skill by taking away his viewers. I am sure if I had done it, Lee Yongjun would have gained another plot armor to overcome it somehow. Resisting his intense urge to destroy all the cameras, Seodam thought of the current situation in his head. I've only been paying attention to Lee Yongjun so far, but in fact the real problem right now is not him. It was this S-rank dungeon. I suggested we move to Point E first, but will it be safe there? No way. In the first place, the premise that we could hold out in this S-rank dungeon until reinforcements came was virtually impossible. Perhaps if this continues, we will be wiped out in less than an hour. The best way to survive is to kill the boss of this dungeon, which is absolutely impossible with this party, but even if it was possible, Lee Yongjun will definitely awaken more skills. By then, Lee Yongjun will be so strong that it'll be impossible for me to deal with him. Seodam again lamented that he had no superpowers. If he had superpowers, he might have been able to suppress this situation by taking interest away from Lee Yongjun. However, Yu Seodam was a F-rank hunter who had to respond carefully and calmly even against F-rank monsters. Lee Yongjun, on the other hand, was blessed. The ridiculous situation of being in a crisis by falling to the mobs should never happen. Obviously, the combination of Yu Seodam and Celeste was also doing a good job against the influx of rank monsters who suddenly appeared, but it was not enough. Skill Attention A and Skill Power Steroid C are out of balance, colliding with each other. Collision. The moment when Yu Seodam was hopping for a negative effect, his eyes widened. Skill Power Steroid C has risen to B. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 8. This fucker. To make matters worse, as Lee Yongjun's ability awakened to B rank, even his level had risen. The situation is getting worse. I have to do something. I've never experienced such a situation in my life. I've never even seen a live broadcast, so I don't know how the viewers are watching it all. Then two messages appeared in my mind. Protagonist Lee Yongjun's skill power steroid B is showing excessive growth rate. Protagonist Lee Yongjun has the potential to acquire the skill power Frenzy S. Hi. UC Autumn unconsciously looked into Lee Yongjun's eyes. The corner of his mouth twitched. Anxiety. Fear. Despair. S-rank dungeon. Hunting the protagonist who is growing without breaks. Either situation seems impossible, and anyone would feel that way. But Seatum was different. He felt as if his mind was beginning to clear up. Drones broadcasts S-rank dungeon, attention-seeking protagonist, and the skill power frenzy. The corner of Seatum's mouth rose. He came up with a way to catch 2 rabbits or 2 sharks at the same time that seemed impossible to hunt. And to catch sharks, you have to bait them first. Hey Lee Yongjun. Yes. Seatum called Lee Yongjun over and with his arms on his shoulders quietly asked. Do you want to be a star? Chapter 12. Shit. I really didn't want to, but I forced myself to say the following lines. Lee Yongjun, you're still a trainee, but you're already a very good hunter. It was like reading a line from a 1990s cartoon. Actually, this line wasn't wrong. Was I going crazy saying such cheesy things? I felt like throwing my head against a rock. However, this one sentence was enough to start. The other day, I proved my ability by overpowering a mutated B-rank monster in my hoodie, and right after the mutation took place earlier when I gave the orders, the viewers responded very well. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 9. It's as expected. Although I couldn't see the chat window, I am sure there will be a feast of nasty words. I can tell just by looking at his soaring interest right now. Jang Hyun-suk and the other outstanding veteran hunters' recognition of the protagonist was a given. What if it was the guy with the broadcast hashtag and an attention-seeking skill? He'll be even more powerful. Good Lee Yongjun, you're indeed great. Oh, are you really a trainee? Don't you want to come under me? That was excellent just now. Lee Yongjun's interest exploded when I said such cliché lines from Korean novels that I wouldn't be caught dead reading. Perhaps this was due to my identity as an operator in the plot. None of the other 13 hunters had experienced a S-rank dungeon or dungeon mutation, but I was experienced and even knew a lot about it. Besides, isn't it the natural thing to show interest in Lee Yongjun like the other senior hunters are? I even used my F-rank body to make Lee Yongjun stand out by moving around and luring the monsters as much as I could. Only now did I realize that it was a real challenge not to be seen positively by the drones. Our current position is Point E. With the exception of Point A, which is the entrance of the dungeon, 4 points were mapped, so it was approximately 4 hours of travel. For now, Point E looks safe on top of the ridge because of its blind spot, but that's just for now. Obviously, within half an hour, this place will be swarmed with monsters. That's why even when others were taking a short break at E Point, I was finishing up my preparations. Then I called Celeste over. Even though there was a translator, I deliberately turned it off and looked at Celeste. She was also sensible enough to turn off her translator. Only me and this little girl can speak Italian here. What about you? Are you all right? Yes. You are not hurt anywhere? Yes. That's a relief. Then listen carefully. A little later, I am going to smash Lee Yongjun's drone. Despite the sudden remark, her face remained calm. Yes. Don't ask why. After I handle the drone, I'll signal you to angle your camera at Lee Yongjun. Yes. Did you forget every word except yes because of the shock? No. Why is her reaction so poor? Anyways, I then called Lee Yongjun over alone. It was to give him thorough information on every monster in this dungeon. Of course, other hunters were knowledgeable on how to respond to the monsters too. Everyone could mostly predict what monsters would appear here just by looking at the words Snow and Polonia that made up the name of the dungeon, and would understand how to hunt here. However, the reason why I only told Lee Yongjun about this. Because the protagonist had to be special. So do you understand? Of course. It's great that you're confident. Explaining the monster's weaknesses and rare features that ordinary hunters would not know, Lee Yongjun listened as if he would not miss a single word. Of course, I didn't know everything either. There were many cases where I knew as much as what others knew. Still, every little detail will turn into the protagonist's cliché. For example, wasn't there something like this? You don't have to know this, but there is a 0.0001% chance of running into a red chaos skull. Well, never run into it, but just keep it in mind. That's the sort of line a side character would say. What? The red chaos skull. Damn it, what are we supposed to do? The protagonist will turn into reality. Even the senior hunters were taken back when they saw the red chaos skull, which has a 0.0001% chance of appearing, and only Lee Yongjun rushed at it. However, they were not afraid because even though the original B-rank monster had turned into an A rank, it only had sharp claws that ripped through the air. Though it was still too much for Lee Yongjun to handle it alone with his current power. So although Lee Yongjun didn't hunt it without the help of me, Jang Hyun-suk, and other hunters, it didn't matter. Aside from successfully killing it, it was important that only Lee Yongjun was shown to bravely rush at the monster while everyone else was flustered. Very good. With compliments come. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 10. This is how it is. Now none of the remaining 6 trainees are a match for Lee Yongjun. He was already in the limelight, and after this, he will surely make a name for himself as the new C-rank hunter who took the lead in attacking a S-rank dungeon. The current viewers who are watching this broadcast will also spread the news, and soon the numbers will rise. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 11. Protagonist Lee Yongjun is showing excessive growth rate. Probability of a cliché occurring reduced. The first way to clear the S-rank dungeon. By forcefully strengthening the protagonist and having him carry. The fact that it became a S-rank dungeon and stage for Lee Yongjun. Even if he stays still, Lee Yongjun will somehow get out of this alive. However, will all side characters be able to survive? That was the first problem, and the second problem was that if the dungeon was cleared normally, only one of 2 rabbits would be caught. I am a skilled hunter. If 2 rabbits come into my sight, I must catch both. Phew. Without even looking, I sneaked a pistol with a silencer attached to it out of my waist and shot down the first drone. Lee Yongjun, who had an increasing number of viewers, has just experienced an artificial crisis. This was not a cliché made by the plot, but a crisis I forced myself. Hey! Shouted the bewildered Lee Yongjun, then messages that only I could see appeared in my mind. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 3. The state of the protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed excessively. Protagonist Lee Yongjun has a strong chance to acquire the skill power Frenzy S. Protagonist Lee Yongjun's skill power Steroid B has responded to a crisis. Protagonist Lee Yongjun's skill Attention A has risen to A+. Again, as expected, as soon as a crisis came, the response came immediately. However, there is no need to make the crisis worse right now. I signaled Celeste as we planned earlier. Then she nodded and hurried up to Lee Yongjun. Let's share my drone. Can I? Yes. Lee Yongjun's eyes glistened after hearing the stiff Korean words coming out of the translator. The reaction came immediately. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjun has changed, 77 plus 13. The state of the protagonist Lee Yongjun is showing excessive changes. Oh, it's working. In fact, it was slightly an experiment sending Celeste. There were other safety nets. One of the most important bittersweet moments for the protagonist was with the opposite gender, so I wanted to experiment with it. And the experiment turned out to be successful. If Celeste was a man and Lee Yongjun was a woman, the result would have been the same. The existence of the opposite gender's goodwill when the protagonist is faced with a crisis. That alone will give the protagonist strength. Because this was also a cliché. With the combined viewers, the total number of viewers have increased tremendously. Protagonist Lee Yongjun's skill power, Steroid B growth potential has occurred. There is no more crisis. In the first place, when the dungeon mutated into S rank, we had already reached the deepest part of the dungeon. Lee Yongjun and Celeste continued to bond while sharing the drone. Arriving in front of the boss area, I gathered the hunters and explained about the boss. Speaking briefly, I explained the rough patterns and cautions because it was not necessary to elaborate. Anyways, the boss fight is supposed to be the protagonist solo. The boss area was at the top of a tree with a huge flower in the middle. It's called the suntan flower. As its name implies, it was a flower that enjoyed tanning in the sun at the top of the tree. Originally, it would have been a branch-like monster as the boss, but now there is a named monster due to the dungeon turning into S rank. Before the boss fight, we need to check each person's condition. After saying that, I called Lee Yongjin over and took out a red syringe from my pocket. It wasn't just a simple drug, it was a health potion. Modern potions have employed the injection method, as it's the easiest and fastest way to heal rather than through drinking or spraying. This is because it is possible to maximize efficiency by injecting directly into the bloodstream. Your hurt, it'll heal you. Oh, thank you. Potions are super expensive, so I never use it on others. Naturally, Lee Yongjin had no intention of refusing the offer from the start. As I moved his arm away, I could see it. Bluish veins were bulging out. It's as expected. It is now the last part of the plan. Lee Yongjin. When I suddenly shouted loudly, the hunters who were quiet quickly focused their attention on me. You, what's with your arm? Ho, what the hell is this? Slowly backing away, I quickly put the precious potion syringe back into my pocket and took out my pistol and aimed it at Lee Yongjin. In fact, the ether pistol doesn't work that well against B-rank superhumans. However, acting was key in this situation. No way y'all are doing ether doping. I know something is wrong. Whoosh. With stiff expressions, every senior hunter present pointed their weapon at Lee Yongjin. Blue veins. There was no hunter here who didn't know, including the viewers. That's a sign when you force an injection of drugs, including ether, to boost your ability known as doping. Hunters who did ether doping have a very high probability of becoming mutants. Lee Yongjin is the protagonist. If it had been the way it was, this would not have happened to him. But I already knew. The fact that Lee Yongjin awakened through a drug I don't know about and that it is related to ether doping. However, normal people were unable to withstand that drug, and only Lee Yongjin was able to withstand it because of his fraudulent skill Power Steroid. Power Steroid. At first glance, it seems like a skill created by doping, but it was actually a skill that increased the doping digestion rate. In other words, even drugs that would have made normal people crazy, Lee Yongjin perfectly digested them through this skill. And since it was difficult for Lee Yongjin to display his full strength as a C rank, I forced him to tire himself out earlier. Then, I injected him with a potion to rile up the dormant ether drug in his body to the point where the Power Steroid skill couldn't withstand it and became visible on the skin. The reaction was explosive. From the hunters. No. From the viewers. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjin has changed, 77 plus 15. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjin has changed, 77 plus 16. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjin has changed, 77 plus 17. Ether doping was not uncommon even though it was banned by international law. Lee Yongjin, who was called a rising star trainee and gained overwhelming recognition from everyone, turned out to be doping. It was enough to elicit an explosive response. Although I can't tell because I can't watch the broadcast, surely the chat will be updated to an unreadable level and there will be countless viewers coming from social network sites. This completes the reason to kill the protagonist. No one will oppose me killing Lee Yongjin now. You Hunter Seatum, please give us your orders, what should we do? Asked Jang Hyunsuk with a quivering voice. But I waited silently. Social death. It became too much of a crisis for Lee Yongjin. In the end, the skill, which was on the verge of awakening, will awaken. The protagonist Lee Yongjin has gained the skill Blood Rage S+. Level of protagonist Lee Yongjin has changed, 77 plus 33. What do you mean Blood Rage? Wasn't it supposed to be Power Frenzy? You've gained a skill that's a little stronger than I thought, but it's no problem. You're our only hope. Mr. Hunter, you see autumn, what should we do? Hunter, you see autumn. They're crying out for me from all sides. You bastards, at first you treated me like a nobody, now you're suddenly looking for me. Such simple-mindedness. It is extremely rare for a S-rank skill to have side effects, because it was a skill that only a very few selected people could have. Skills that make you lose your reason and run wild in exchange for overwhelming power. Some say they can't use it for fear of hurting their colleagues, but it was hard for me to understand. Anyway, when you don't have power, you'll feel envious of others. When Lee Yongjun shouted, the third-grade suit he was wearing broke and his size grew huge. Protagonist Lee Yongjun has entered the mana poisoning state. I frowned at the message. Originally he had bluish skin, but after transforming his skin turned red. Isn't this similar to the B-rank mutant I killed at Konkuk University Station the other day? Wait, I'll take care of it. I pointed my pistol at Lee Yongjun and fired. Bang! The shot briefly reverberated. Lee Yongjun ran towards me. At that time, I was already running for the boss monster suntan flower. Boom! The suntan flower sensed me and shot a giant stalk down. At that moment, Lee Yongjun, who was running towards me, was directly hit by it. Everyone should have heard of the name Lee Yongjun by now. The reason why the main character has grown to such an extent. With social death, the side characters can live. If there are two enemies, why don't you make them fight? The number of viewers kept increasing. In addition to his Blood Rage S+ and mutation, Lee Yongjun gained explosive growth due to the number of viewers. His state has reached the level of a decent ranker, but he will probably have lasting side effects even if he returns to his original form. The fight was devastating. Everything that we've learned so far can't compare to this, the bloody struggle between two ignorant and cruel beasts biting, scratching, and hurting each other. Senior hunters, including myself, played the role of balancing both sides. It is to make Lee Yongjun, who is attacking the suntan flower, even more tired. The suntan flower had no time to care about us because we only shot from afar, and Lee Yongjun also had no time to look back at us while battling the suntan flower. Finally, the suntan flower fell down. As Lee Yongjun roared in anger, I tilted my head. You still have the power to scream, get rid of the camera. Protagonist Lee Yongjun's skill attention A has been deactivated. Before long, Lee Yongjun, who had lost all his power, was hit by the combined superpowers of the senior hunters who were waiting patiently. All I had to do was fire the finishing touch. You've successfully hunted a level 77 protagonist. Your level has risen by 2. 770 days of lifespan has been rewarded. Remaining lifespan, 1423 days, 9 hours, 36 minutes. Emergency mission completed successfully. You can randomly absorb 2 of their talents or skills. Do you wish to absorb it? Chapter 13. The small debut in Korea has ended. It was broadcast live over the internet, and most of the viewers were Korean due to the fact that 13 of the 14 hunters and prospects were Korean. However, after the incident, videos of the debut have begun to spread throughout the world. The reasons were simple. A dungeon mutation phenomenon occurred in which a C-rank dungeon upgraded to S-rank. And an aspiring hunter who faked awakening as a superhuman by ether doping. Even with such problems, they managed to clear the S-rank dungeon with only 14 people. If you look at each problem separately, the response would have only been, oh, another incident like that happened. But when you combine both things, it became a hot issue. First, topics about the rise and fall of C-rank trainee Lee Yongjun. Lee Yongjun, the first person to finally awaken as a superhuman through hard work and diligence. Having made his debut as a C-rank superhuman, many people around the world were already familiar with him. Even though he has no superpowers, the world was filled with people who really wanted to be a hunter, and so Lee Yongjun became their ray of hope. But it was all a lie. Lee Yongjun, what's with your arm? As soon as the man's voice was heard in the video, the camera panned to Lee Yongjun's arm. It was a clear sign of ether doping. People were shocked and lamented. The higher the star, the greater the impact from the fall. Not just that, Lee Yongjun lost control of himself due to anger from having his secret revealed, which eventually led to the worst possible side effect of ether doping, mana poisoning. Soon after, the video showed Lee Yongjun chasing a hunter named Yu Seodam. Then everything became a mess, and the video ended with the words "Get rid of the camera." The details of the second half were not available. However, there's only one important point. The 13 hunters and trainees faced both the power of the rank mutant and S-rank dungeon boss without a single death, and won. In that case, another question rose about how it had been done. It was natural for the name Jang Hyun-suk, who had the highest rank among the 7 veteran hunters, to be brought up. S-rank dungeons required at least 3 S-rank superhumans and at least 20 A-rank superhumans to support them. Then, the conclusion is that S-rank Jang Hyun-suk was better than people thought. It was normal to conclude that. But it wasn't that. It was F-rank hunter Yu Seodam's perfect leadership. That's what all the hunters who survived, including Jang Hyun-suk, said. Without Yu Seodam's strategy and knowledge, they would not have survived. In fact, he supported his D-rank trainee without much presence throughout the video, but only began to show his presence the moment the dungeon mutation occurred. In a way, it was similar to a professional athlete watching a practice soccer game quietly, then schooling the students as soon as he stepped onto the field. He immediately took the authority from Jang Hyun-suk and even ignored the orders from headquarters so he could decisively lead the party safely. Nobody knew how it happened, but Yu Seodam was the first to notice the dangerous state of Lee Yongjun and how to take advantage of it to subdue both threats. Yu Seodam, you punk, wasn't it only a few days that you were discharged from the hospital? Late afternoon, Incheon International Airport. Taylor 9, sitting cross-legged on a bench at an outdoor bus stop, twirled her hair while looking at the articles on her smartphone. "I'm glad you're still active." Everyone passing by glanced at her. Certainly, Taylor 9 looks could be called unique. Short silver hair, golden pupils, 9 piercings on her ears, a lightly exposed dress that was not suitable for the current cold weather, and a fierce but beautiful face. Together it made for a striking appearance. Isn't that the S-rank hunter Taylor 9? What, the one that's active in Europe? Wow, awesome, she's so pretty. Should we try talking to her? Does she speak English? Taylor 9 turned her head sharply as people around her began to whisper in Korean. Then she spoke in very clear Korean. "What are you looking at? Get lost." "What? You understand Korean, don't you? What's your problem?" The disgruntled passerby hurried on their way after seeing Taylor 9's fierce eyes. After they left, Taylor 9 turned back to her smartphone. Guild Lost Day's statement on the mana poisoning. New scandal on Lost Day. Total denial of the mutant. Korea's giant guild Lost Day, little by little, was faltering. It was very interesting to her. Because not long ago it was where Seodam was strangled like a slave. Good, you little bastards. Of course, Lost Day was a giant guild and wasn't hurt too badly by just a few scandals. But for some reason Taylor 9 was quite happy that Lost Day was shaken even a little. Taylor 9 sprang up from her seat, stretched out, and soon smiled. It would have been great if she could help Seodam, but it was difficult coming to Korea with the number of cases she had to deal with. It's been a long since we've gone on a hunt together, so I am going to ask him while he's not in a guild. Boom! The sandbag, which was struck by my fists, eventually busted open. With my hands on the wall, I gasped for air as my whole body shook in excitement. 3 days after the S-rank dungeon. I've been experimenting with my abilities, and now I can safely say that my physical ability has finally made it to E rank. My whole body is overflowing with energy. This is the power gained through leveling up. In addition, I successfully hunted Lee Yongjun and was able to steal 1 talent and skill from him. Lee Yongjun's talent-deprived A has been absorbed. My face soured when I saw this message. Lee Yongjun's skill attention A+ has been absorbed. Then I was filled with great expectations when I saw this message. Attention! How powerful did Lee Yongjun become through this skill? However, as expected, it was not a normal skill. The skill was created by forcibly twisting the world's cliché. The acquisition of the skill attention A+ has been cancelled. Then, when I was disappointed because I thought I had wasted one chance. Under the influence of cliché, you may choose one talent or skill to absorb, except for the cancelled skill. In other words, it wasn't wasted. In return for not being able to absorb a skill the protagonist had, I was given the option to choose one skill or talent. Wouldn't it be great if it happened every time in the future? With such a thought, I checked the list of skills and talents Lee Yongjin had. As expected, he had various skills and talents. Really, I can't believe he had all these talents. Like, what was the knitting talent for? To be honest, my hands were shaking looking at Berserk S+. S-rank superpower. It was also a superpower in the side effect category, which has unparalleled power. However, the side effect could not be controlled, and it is a fatal disadvantage not being able to activate it when I want, as well as losing my rationale when it did. Which meant a very sharp double-edged sword. Rather than that, I wanted an ability that was immediately beneficial. After much thought, I chose this. The skill Wind Step D has been absorbed. A skill that has a high potential to grow and can complement my slow movements. It was a movement series skill. Superpowers can grow through training, even if they start out low rank. Of course, I was often blocked by the limits of my talent, but now I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I boldly absorbed a low-rank skill. Power Steroid and Berserk were the better choices now, but it is better to build a solid foundation for the future than to be blinded by short-term gains. With this, I've obtained a suitable skill, so I was satisfied. Suddenly, a message appeared. Talent Intuition rank A and Deprived rank A have resonated. Skill Sixth Sense rank F has been created. Out of nowhere, my talents resonated and a new skill was created. That too was a skill that I needed very much. Has there ever been anyone else who have experienced two talents resonating with each other? Talents were something people were born with. Unless there's a way to absorb other people's talents. I've always had a good intuition. When I felt like I was going to die, or when a real crisis came, or when I felt something was wrong. It was only when I started hunting protagonists did I realize this was my talent. Intuition rank a talent. Then Deprived rank A was gained. You can now sense things that the five senses can't. Although the rank was still low and I couldn't feel anything right, it was fine. I had no choice but to avoid monsters in advance before, but now I've improved my ability. In addition, the level of the Protagonist Hunter had risen. By successfully hunting 3 protagonists, the level of Protagonist Hunter has risen by 2. Increase the weight limit to 30 kg. From now on, you can grasp the flow of the protagonist's story. Any changes the protagonist makes to their world's plot, you will be able to sense it. To be honest, I don't know what that means. I just thought it must be a good thing if it had risen in level. Status window. Frankly speaking, this was enough for me to live my life leisurely, but I had no intention of stopping here. Someone approached me as I was cleaning up the smashed sandbag after I checked my ability. Turning my head, Celeste stood in her casual clothes. It was a bit of a surprise because I've only seen her in her uniform or suit. A peach dress under a mink coat and black stockings stretched below it. Seeing her neatly braided hair and light makeup, she seemed to be preparing for something. Are you going somewhere? When I was thinking that, she with a sullen look spoke. Let's go buy your equipment. What? Oh, that's right. I just remembered that I was owed 3 second-grade equipment for helping her as a senior hunter. But, do I need to come with you? Then Celeste closed her lips, contemplated something, and soon nodded. Yes. Really? As far as I know, that wasn't the case. In the first place, even the vouchers of a workshop can be sent through the phone. If I just press a button on my smartphone to send the request, everything will be okay. But in a pretty determined voice. I can't go without you. That's what she said, so in the end I had no choice but to go. By the way, it was second grade. Although it's not as good as it used to be, it was still 10 to 20 times more expensive than the third grade equipment I am using now and is worth the price. Wait a minute. With such equipment, wouldn't it be possible to hunt down unique protagonists? For example, a mage. Magic was still an unknown ability to me, and I knew very little, but it wouldn't be for long if I am given enough time. I've seen enough of how mages fought when I hunted the holy sword the other day. Only, I don't know much about magic. There was a high possibility that I wouldn't be able to use the skill even if I obtain one. It means I don't just need magic skills but talent as well. And I had seen the perfect opportunity earlier. Student turned out to be a magic genoese. #fantasy. #regression. #academy. #harem. A protagonist with the #genius. It gave off the smell of talent. For that reason, while I was buying equipment with Celeste, I was also finishing up the last preparation to hunt a mage. Chapter 14. Seoul, Korea. There's a very special alley in Yongsan District. This alley was home to many workshops. For the last 30 years, the development of ETHA has paved the way for new technology. And because of that, the blacksmithing job was revitalized, and this alley was proof of that. From first grade through third grade blacksmiths who dealt with billions of one of materials to even unlicensed fourth grade blacksmiths who handled defective goods. They were all gathered here at Yongsan ETHA Shopping Center. About 30 years ago, this place used to be an electronic shopping mall, but has since changed to a place that dealt with ether-related things and was frequented by hunters who lacked money but urgently needed equipment. December. The season of snow and chilly weather. Autumn walked in sweatpants and a black padded jacket. There was a huge difference from Celeste's proper attire, who was walking beside him. Celeste's eyes glistened, looking at the rows of blacksmiths on the street. They were slightly different from the blacksmiths of the old, but it wasn't actually much different if you consider the idea of melting ether and hammering it. Is this your first time here? Yes, I haven't been here before. You're going to continue following me, aren't you? Autumn looked at Celeste, who followed him here suspiciously. I've never noticed it before, but she stood out too much. Compared to Autumn, who looked common in every way, Celeste had an overly lively appearance. No matter how common foreigners have become, her beautiful and lustrous blonde hair will stand out not only in Korea but also everywhere else. But even with the suspicious glare from Autumn, Celeste quietly followed him. Celeste had a lot of questions about Autumn. Name, age, hometown, siblings, parents, where did you learn swordsmanship, where do you usually hunt, what's your relationship with Lost Day, etc. Really, it was simple curiosity. An unusual F-rank hunter who has a stronger presence than even S-rank. For Celeste, who had seen so many geniuses in the world at such a young age of 17, the existence of Autumn was unique. What kind of equipment do you use? The age of internet orders. Equipment was no different. There were many excellent equipment available in online stores, parts were available at a lower price, and the various reviews made it possible to compare products. So people who bought equipment in person are usually divided into two categories. People with eyes so discerning that they don't need information from others, and people who don't know anything. Celeste knew there was not much of a difference in prices between ETHA stores and online stores, more so merchants knew it was impossible to collude to drive up prices. So she became more curious. What kind of eyes does a hunter like Autumn have when he's choosing his equipment? Is there a way to get better equipment? Of course, everyone knows of it ever since this place was an electronic store. A method that literally everyone knew. A method that can be used by everyone and no one. Such is the case that the method has become a legend. Autumn entered the interior of the tranquil electronic shopping mall. This is Yongsan, also known as the second dungeon. Instead of betting one's life, they betted their wallet here. A horrifying place where one wrong move and you could be stripped bare. Autumn stopped and stood confidently. It's quiet. It's the weekday morning with no customers. But why did you suddenly stop in the middle of the street? Celeste thought about it, then wore her translator device on her ears to translate Korean. Suddenly Autumn shouted. ETHA photodynamic interface 1.2 million won. What? Celeste thought, what crazy situation is this? The moment she had such a thought. Hey, it's in great condition, 1.2 million won. Used goods, 1.17 million won. What it's worth, at least 1.15 million won. 1.1 million won. 1.08 million won. Hey, you have no morals. 1.05 million won. For this little thing, 1.03 million. The merchant hesitated after hearing 1.03 million, and like a death blow from Siadam, the transaction closed. 1.03 million won, sold. Celeste made a "this is ridiculous" expression while looking at Siadam, but it wasn't over. Either take her hull 0.1200 FT, 1.2 million won starting bid. Siadam had purchased 12 more equipment here, totaling 20 million won. It would have cost between 25–30 million won, so it could be seen how much he had haggled. Though of course Siadam didn't randomly buy things just because of its price. If there was even one defective bullet, he would cut the price even more or packed a few more bullets. He would also check the items in the ether dispenser very carefully and meticulously. After purchasing all other necessities, Siadam with a satisfied look spoke. Let's go check the second-grade equipment now. Yes. Celeste, wearing a Korean translator, was able to understand the conversation between Siadam and the merchants, albeit awkwardly. To be honest, she was a little exhausted now. Because this wasn't what she had in mind. So she didn't expect much when he said they would go check the second-grade equipment. However, the moment they entered the first-grade blacksmith shop, Celeste saw Siadam's eyes change. It was the eyes of a veteran hunter staring down a beast. Whoosh! After ejecting the metal blade from an ether blade, Siadam flicked the blade lightly with his finger. Then while stroking it slowly, he spoke. Don't you think the ether coating is too much? What are you talking about? Don't you need at least that much to be able to cut a monster? If this is activated for more than 3 hours, it will overheat and stop working. Why is the cooling on this thing so shit? That's to make it more portable. Lightweight and small things are in fashion these days, but does it have to cut down on the lifespan of the equipment? Siadam then took out every piece of equipment the blacksmith had and scrutinized them one by one. Until finally the blacksmith became dispirited. In the end, he only bought a bullet. Why did you buy that? Spoils of war. The same happened with other blacksmiths. Equipment was a hunter's life. Not to mention the defense. If the weapons don't work properly, the strong and weak hunters would be helpless. Celeste, like being possessed, followed Siadam around like a puppy. She recalled the equipment she had used so far. The finest equipment the family had prepared. She didn't know why they were good and only used them because she was told it was so. Things she never knew about, like their proper usages. Now she understood a little bit. She now felt that she could handle the equipment more efficiently. Siadam had taken 12 more bullets since then, and half a day had already passed, but Celeste didn't even notice. However, by now rumors about them had spread, and the blacksmith started refusing them service. No service. Why? I heard everything. You don't even buy anything and just do all sorts of shit. Watch out for the suspicious hunter who goes around with a pretty girl. The blacksmiths at Yongsan Etha Shopping Center were already wary of them. Siadam with a troubled look nodded. And what am I supposed to do when I don't see anything I like? Let's go check another place. There is nothing I can do if merchants gang up on me. When Siadam gave up and tried to take his business elsewhere, Celeste suddenly took out her smartphone and began filming here and there, including the sign of the shop. The blacksmith wondered what the little girl was trying to do, but unfortunately she only brought a hearing translator and not a speaking translator. Why are you filming? Italian language. Aha, you're going to post a review on your blog. Italian language. You're posting it on social media. Come to think of it, didn't you say you made an account recently? But that's too much. You already have so many followers. What if you start a rumor here? Italian language. Kicking out innocent customers, I think so too. Hey, wait, let's do business. Come in. The 21st century. An era in which social media is common. It was no secret to anyone. The scariest thing was not a hunter like Siadam, but a blogger. It was a good shopping trip. I think so too. Late evening. Siadam smiled contentedly at the full shopping bags in his hands. In the end, he bought 2 average high-performance second-grade equipment and still had money left over, but couldn't find what he wanted for the last equipment. And Celeste, who followed Siadam, picked up many miscellaneous equipment she normally wouldn't use. I am sorry I wasn't able to buy the last one, but it couldn't be helped. While leaving the shopping district, Siadam suddenly noticed an old building that stood out. There were many places that handled ether equipment, but that place was unique. It was a place that only dealt with guns. Though it wasn't the only place to do so, even if it is rare. Especially if it's at an ether shopping mall. The old sign that reads 3rd grade caught Celeste's eyes, but Siadam headed there as if possessed. When the old glass door opened, the stale smell of gunpowder assaulted their senses. Guns used to deal with monsters contained ether, not gunpowder. In other words, this blacksmith specializes not only in ether guns, but vintage guns as well. He was also one of the 2 remaining blacksmiths in the modern era to still be dealing with such firearms. An old craftsman who's unable to forget the past, or just an old craftsman who loves guns. In Siadam's opinion, the owner of this place was the latter. This is because ether guns were more profitable. This is art, isn't it? He slowly stroked a gun hanging on the wall. With a look as if he was appreciating a beautiful piece of art, Siadam looked at each of the obvious mass-produced guns that must have been put out for sale. "Ho, you have a keen eye. People without superpowers are good at using guns," said an old man, keenly walking out from the inner door. Siadam looked at him and asked, "How did you know I don't have superpowers?" "Anyone can tell at a glance. The calluses and eyes tell me they've fought on the battlefield, but people with superpowers don't use guns. But you know a lot about guns, isn't it, to cover your weakness of not having superpowers?" Other bullets were also expensive. However, superhumans alone easily surpass the power of guns. Unlike bullets, it is difficult to maintain the power of an ether blade, so I rarely used it under normal circumstances. But ordinary people had to cover their weakness of not having superpowers somehow. Thus, with tears of blood, they used guns that cost hundreds of thousands per shot. So unless they die, ordinary hunters either quit being hunters or they became gun experts. And hunters who are the latter usually die shortly after. "I don't know if there's anything here that would interest a hunter like yourself," said the old man, but in fact there was one thing that caught his eyes since he came here. "What's that?" The gun that Siadam pointed to was as long as a sniper rifle and as thick as a machine gun. I knew at once when I saw it that it was made with the essence of ether science, but for some reason it looked to be an ornament. "That's a modified DK-001 crossbow shooter that can shoot 6 bullets at a time. Crazy crossbow shooter. It has to be at least 2nd grade. There was just one problem: the crossbow shooter was too heavy for ordinary people to carry around. Furthermore, it was even modified to fire 6 bullets. If there's one problem, it's that this monster is hard to use unless someone has at least E-rank physical strength. It may be possible to carry it around and use it as a F-rank hunter. However, on the battlefield where you need to respond quickly to every situation, carrying such a heavy load will make it difficult to move nimbly. So that's the dilemma. There is no reason for superhumans to use guns, and it was difficult for ordinary people to use." He was right. Siadam had E-rank ability now, and if he wielded an ether blade with the ability of white swordsmanship and swordsmanship rank A, he wouldn't need that monstrous gun. That's only if you excluded very special cases. But Siadam no longer hunted only monsters. The next prey was none other than a mage, and their strength was to fight from afar. Do you think they'll allow you to get close with just a sword or shooting a pistol? They are also smart enough to have a variety of methods to prevent people from doing so. To break through the unusual magic barrier used by mages, powerful distant means were needed. "You'll buy it." The shopping trip ended. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes. The inspection of all my equipment had long been completed. While I had to give up other equipment except for the most essential ones, a gun called Mega Shooter was strapped to my back. An ether coat as well as a highly charged Mega Shooter, ether blade, and 2nd grade equipment to deal with mages. My wallet is in tatters, but if I can succeed in hunting a mage, this amount of investment will be worth it. Give me the next mission. "Hey, client. Sorry, I was taking a short break. You take breaks. No matter when I called, you always answered me, so I thought it was a 24-hour service. I am ready. Student turned out to be a magic genoese. Hashtag fantasy. Hashtag regression. Hashtag academy. Hashtag harem. Traveling to Vivienda Magic Empire, the world of the level 70 protagonist Fiolin. 10, 9, 8. My vision briefly flickered, and when I opened my eyes again. 2, 1, 0. Travel completed. You became a magic combat guest professor at Vivienda Magic High Academy. A whole new world came into view. The first thing I saw was the sky. Through a window, the blue clouds roamed. The sky felt too close. So I went close to the window, and when I looked down, the view of a bottomless cliff welcomed me. Crazy. Then I saw a huge building floating in midair. There were crystal balls and even some winged lizards gliding through the sky. I stepped back slowly, unable to contain bewilderment. No matter how advanced magic is, was this possible? I slowly looked around. I was in an office with an unusual style. The desk was full of books with leather covers, but it was impossible to understand them even though I could read it. Brief study of Yerwin's third law of magic 1098p. Solving the paradox of trigonometric by Fairy Aladdin. Essence of Magic First Edition. What's this? I was slowly looking over the books when suddenly the door behind me opened and someone came in. Professor Yu. A man suddenly rushed at me. What? Are you looking for a fight? Just in case, I placed a hand on my ether blade even though I could not sense any hostility. Professor, what are you still doing here? Freshman mana circling orientation has started. Professor. Only. Yes. Me. Yes. I was dumbfounded and tried to refute, but suddenly this man grabbed me by the wrist. Professor, hurry up before you ray any later. Yes. I became a professor in a world of magic. Chapter 15. Willis, who introduced himself as my first-grade combat magic assistant, led me somewhere while constantly moving his mouth. He was awfully talkative. Isn't it really exciting? 3 geniuses entered Vivienda Academy at the same time. Yeah, it's amazing. But there's just one problem. Vivienda Magic Academy was founded 500 years ago by the wizard Linkare. He built the school on a giant structure 10 km above ground to keep non-mages from entering. There are not only 1 but 2 people talking right now. The academy is powered by the greatest mana stone of this world. Hey. What? Go ahead. Why are you talking so much all of a sudden? Your skill Protagonist Hunter is now level 2, making it possible to understand the world's plot. Really? But it doesn't matter. Okay, that's enough, quiet down. If there are 2 existences explaining things, it is better to listen to the one that was explaining the more useful information. While the client was explaining the useless history of the school, Assistant Willis was explaining the current situation, so it was obvious who I should be listening to. Okay. Somehow, the client, who was always emotionless, hid her presence as if she had become quite sullen. That's why, Professor, are you listening? That was very interesting. What? It's interesting that Principal Madelani's wig fell off during a speech. Different people find different things interesting. Oh, I see. Willis, who quickly nodded, went on to explain. So who do you think will get the highest mark in this circling? What are you talking about? I didn't understand, so I decided to flip the question. What do you think? I think it will be Guram, who scored 2nd place in the entrance exam. Although he's weak at theory, his mana circling, which has been handed down from generations, is excellent. Professor, don't you think so? I don't know, you bastard. In the first place, what's circling? Well, Maislan, who entered 3rd, is also great. I really don't know how a person from a fallen family managed to achieve tier 2 circles. He's really a genius. If the family was intact, the top spot wouldn't be out of the question. I agree. Of course, for the most part, they did very well. He shrugged his shoulders and giggled. Though neither their theory nor practice is comparable to Arisley, who got a perfect score and the top grade in overwhelming fashion. 1st place Arisley. 2nd place Guram. 3rd place Maislan. The protagonist's name was Fiolan, so it was none of these. However, the protagonist may be using an alias, so I don't want to completely rule out the possibility that one of those three is the protagonist, since genius was the hashtag of this world. Maybe we're going to record the biggest magic grade in the history of Vivienda Magic Academy today. While we were talking, me and Willis arrived at a huge gate at the end of a corridor. There were quite a few young children around wearing strange capes. I guess they're students of this academy. Let's go. The door opened. A huge auditorium appeared in front of me. The auditorium, which was reminiscent of an Olympic stadium, was arranged like a spiral. At the very center was a blue crystal and a chandelier-like seat floating in midair. "Your seat is over there, Professor," said Willis as he hurried away. Crazy, it was so damn high. I lightly walked up the escalator-like structure and sat down in the seat. After sitting for about 5 minutes, the rest of the professors sat down. "Bye. All right, everybody quiet down." As I looked down, an old mage sitting in the center drew my attention. His voice was so powerful that it echoed throughout the auditorium, even though he quietly spoke. "This year's batch of freshmen will now begin their circling." After a short round of applause, one by one, students in green capes began to descend the spiral staircase. Only then did I know what circling is. Just as physical examinations quantify the energy possessed by superhumans on Earth, circling was a way of measuring the mana possessed by mages of this world. And how hunters took a strength test at each entrance and graduation ceremony during high school. The mages' mana were also publicly measured by that blue crystal ball. First year's Theory Magic Department Xandorite, mana 31. "Why?" There was a burst of exclamation from the surrounding students. The light from the crystal ball seemed unusual to me, but apparently the mana was quite high. Since then, other students have put their hands on the crystal ball, and the average number ranged from 10 to 20. Soon, the faculties quietly began to whisper amongst themselves. "He's finally here. Is that child Maislan?" "It should be, yes." A boy with distinct features walked up and placed his hand on the crystal ball. He was Maislan, the third-place student. First year Combat Magic Department, Maislan Verith, mana 46. A commotion broke out. "Oh my, isn't that enough to be tier 3 circles already? Unbelievable. Maislan is probably a genius." However, he was not the protagonist. This is because no hashtags appeared above his head. One suspect down. About 30 students later, the second suspect appeared. This student was Guram. Something about his face makes him look cunning and mean. First year Combat Magic Department, Guram Hainbull, mana 49. Once again, the hall became noisy. Every year it's rare seeing even one student with mana over 30 enrolling. What's going on with this batch of students this time? There were talks among the professors, but Guram is also not the protagonist. Soon 100 students came and went. Finally, the last suspect appeared. With straight black hair, a lively-faced girl placed her hand on the crystal ball. Support character Arisley uses Arisley mana circling MK2 rank C. What is this? A supporting character. The moment such a question arose. First year Combat Magic Department, Arisley Lankare, mana 52. A disturbance which is incomparable to previous filled the auditorium. Even the professors seemed to be amazed and were left speechless. Really, the rumor once in a 1,000-year genius was not a lie. There's also another rumor that she inherited the blood of the great mage Linkare. But at the age of 17, the mana of 52 doesn't make sense. Her body won't be able to handle it. What is she going to do? As expected, Arisley, being the top student, had the highest mana, but unfortunately she is not the protagonist either. What was that? Whether or not she could sense my disturbed mind, Arisley straightened her shoulders in triumph. She seems to be the prideful type. But I don't care. I have to find the protagonist. Then, all of a sudden, the auditorium became noisy. A scruffy boy was approaching the crystal ball. Haha, what a pitiful commoner, of all things to be the next student after Arisley. Tusk, does he even have mana? I can't believe such a fellow got into the school. I could hear the whispers of the student, but I mostly ignored it. because I could clearly see hashtags floating above the boy's head. Student turned out to be a magic genoese. Hashtag fantasy. Hashtag regression. Hashtag academy. Hashtag harem. He was none other than Fiolin, the protagonist of this world. He's the protagonist. Fiolin placed his hand on the crystal ball without even caring if others were looking or not. Then a clear blue glow came out that is not even comparable to the ones previously. Protagonist Fiolin used the skill Aerosly Mana circling MK40 rank SS. A mysterious message appeared in my mind. Immediately, the professor in charge of the crystal ball had a shocked expression. First year, Combat Magic Department Fiolin, the Mana is. The professor looked at the number again, afraid that it was wrong. But the crystal ball is always accurate. In other words, this unbelievable number is reality. Oh my 70. The auditorium became unnaturally quiet. Aerosly was shocked while the principal calmly nodded. Fiolin smiled. That look which was familiar to me because I have lived on the battlefield for more than 10 years. The ugly smile of someone who is robbed from another. Fiolin regressed from 20 years in the future. The skill Aerosly Mana circling MK40 rank SS used just now was created by the future mage Aerosly 20 years from now after numerous trials and errors. It was a predictable development. Aerosly Linker, a rare genius who is said to have advanced the magic of this world by more than a few hundreds, 20 years from now. She seems to be blessed by the world, but she turned out not to be the protagonist. Just a supporting role to the protagonist. 20 years later, whatever achievements Aerosly had is now gone. The present Aerosly has no idea what her future achievements are, but the regressor Fiolin knows everything. And me too. Protagonist Hunter Level 2 has activated due to the changes in the world's plot. In the original timeline, Aerosly took first place in the preliminary test. In the second timeline, Fiolin beat Aerosly to take first place. In the original timeline, Aerosly came up with the idea of a strange mechanical device as a student. In the second timeline, Fiolin invented the strange mechanical device altogether. In the original timeline, Aerosly was selected to play in the magical sport air soccer. In the second timeline, Fiolin took Aerosly's spot because she was injured. In the original timeline, Aerosly had many university-level formulas and was highly praised by the professors. In the second timeline, Fiolin deeply suppressed Aerosly by stealing all her formulas. What's even more funny was the magic formula Fiolin used to suppress Aerosly this time. The formula presented by the protagonist Fiolin this time will be created by Aerosly 3 years from now. In other words, Fiolin is stealing all the achievements from the future Aerosly by returning to the past and thoroughly destroying her. He was such a vicious person that even I, who likes to take away other people's belongings, could not tolerate it. And it wasn't just Aerosly. High-end ice magic suits you more than flame magic. No way my family has learned flame magic for generations. Trust me if you want to surpass your limits. Since it's an academy where numerous aristocrats gathered, there were many beautiful ladies here, and Fiolin chatted up all the pretty girls. Gosh, Fiolin, how did you know I liked calf ladate? Reminds me of home. Thank you, Fiolin, I followed your advice and it's really true. Ah, Fiolin, you knew this was my favorite spot. I enjoy coming here by myself. Every single conversation was so full of youth. The way he talks is also very unique, like he's afraid of sounding like a noble. Seeing such sights, you'd think Shakespeare had reincarnated. A little over a month later, Fiolin founded his harem kingdom, while Aerosly became increasingly devastated. The girl who was confident a month ago now shrunk her shoulders at the mere mention of a person. It's a little pitiful, but it wasn't something I could solve. I thought it would naturally resolve itself once I succeeded in hunting Fiolin anyway. What have I been doing, you may ask? While still making preparations to hunt Fiolin, I tried to learn magic somehow. Of course, it wasn't easy. Magic required at least college-level understanding, and in the first place, my academic background back on Earth is that I couldn't even graduate middle school. But in this world, and especially in a magic academy like this, it was possible to gather information and study magic. Magic. It was more difficult, mysterious, and fantastic than I thought. An idea had come to mind. There is science and superpowers on Earth, but there is no magic. There is magic here, but there is no science or superpowers. If I combine the two, what will happen? Professor Yu, please continue with the lecture. While lost in my thoughts, the sound of someone's voice snapped me out of it. Right, I was conducting a combat magic lecture for the first-year students. I don't know any magic, but fortunately, my assistant Willis took care of everything, so I didn't have to do anything. However, Professor, show us the concentrated magic shot you showed us last time. Show us. The students asked me with sparkling eyes. Concentrated magic shot. In fact, it's actually just me shooting my pistol and not magic. I took a pistol out from my waist, put on the silencer, and fired 3 shots into the sky. Then 3 sparrows flying in the sky fell to the ground. Wow, amazing, how did you shoot it so far? The magic was casted without chanting. I really want to learn it. Guys, I'm sorry. This is all a scam. The students weren't the only ones who fell for my magic. When I showed a few tricks using my ETHA equipment, the professors rushed to my class, hopping to observe. About a month later, all the professors who had no classes and time to spare came to watch my outdoor classes. So there were more professors than students in my class. But wouldn't the professors notice my scam? I was nervous about such an outcome. Professor Yu's magic is amazing. Amazing, I can't believe I can't feel the injection of mana. What kind of magic do you have to learn to do that? As expected, the path to learning is endless. I want to read Professor Yu's thesis. No, professors, please don't do that. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.